All right. Good evening. Today is Tuesday, March 12th, 2024, and we are calling to order the City of Oregon City's work session for tonight. Would you do the roll call, Mr. Lee or Mr. Wiley?
Commissioner Adam Marl is excused. Commissioner Mike Mitchell.
Here.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Here.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Here.
Mayor Denise McGriff.
Present. So before we get to the first item, which is a list of future work items, I want to do a quick shout out. So some of you know that I recently met with our illustrious Boy Scouts who who have not attended any of our meetings this year but did last year. So I want to give a quick shout out to Boy Scout Pack 209 of Oregon City and troop leaders Angela and Bill Bierman. I am wearing the shirt that they gave me that represents their troop. And they were working on their ARC Light badge, which means they have to go and interview a person who is in local government and find all about what we do. So we did that recently and had a really great time. So I will turn this over to Mr. Conkle, who's going to talk to us about our future work session agenda items.
Thank you. So for next month, we have McLaughlin Boulevard Enhancement Project. So continue to follow up with potential designs for pedestrian access from 10th to roughly the corner in 99E, as well as update from the Natural Resource Committee. And then in May, we should have the Parks and Recreation Master Plan update ready to bring forward. An update on the 5-year pavement maintenance utility fee plan update. So providing an update on the work that's been done, as well as how we plan out the next 5 years for that maintenance program. And then potentially a geologic hazard code update. I have been in discussions with Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, trying to find a date to potentially come and have a work session with the commission on some of the development plans for the property on the old Blue Heron site.
Now known as
Tumwata Village.
with a not capital T and a small B.
Yes.
We're not capitalizing it. I checked.
Yeah.
All right. Any questions about that? And just for the record, if people are wondering, Commissioner Marl is attending the National League of Cities meeting in Washington, D.C., and they were meeting with their legislators on the Hill today, so I think they had to get up pretty early and be out and about. All right, so next on our agenda, we have City Manager's update on city projects. Did you do that?
Sorry,
Okay.
yeah, I think we're on discussion.
Okay, discussion topic, so sorry. Clackamette Park Master Plan. Clackamette Cove RV Park alternate location discussion.
So we'll have Mr. Reed come down.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Nice to see you both again.
I see you too.
To be here.
Yep. Mayor and City Commissioners, tonight we're here to provide an update on the Clackamette Park Master Plan. At the December 12th meeting, at the City Commission work session, the City Manager directed the Parks Department to explore the possibility of relocating the RV park from the location shown in our master plan to a location at Clackamette Cove. And so tonight I have Brian Martin from Lego Hansen here to share some of the information that we've been able to gather.
Thank you, Kendall. Yeah, as Kendall mentioned, we spent some time looking at that alternate site across the highway from Clackamette Park, just looking at the feasibility of and what it would take to relocate the RV park across the highway.
Oh, you can do it. Perfect.
I think I can.
Oh, he did it. Okay, awesome.
It's not advancing.
It's not like you could do with the old slide projector and you just click the little button on it and there it went. We're not getting it to advance.
Yeah.
Nope.
Can I also do this, man?
Yay.
So before we get a closer look at the alternate location, we kind of want to step back and look at the surrounding properties and the work done to date and any important contextual information. So in this view, north is up for orientation. Clackamette Park is located on the left side there at the Willamette and the Clackamas. And so there's a box around the existing RV park. You'll note to the right of that is the location in the master plan, just north of McDonald's and beside the highway, but connected to the park. And then moving to the right, to the east, on Clackamette Cove is the alternate RV park study location. That parcel is about just under 4.5 acres. And that is one of the pieces of the overall Clackamette Cove master plan. And you'll see to the far right, the rest of the area that was included, or is included rather, in the Clackamette Cove master plan.
That is a really good aerial shot. I mean, it actually looks better from the air than it does from the ground.
How blue that water is.
I know, it's like, wow.
Not something to tell prospective investors.
It looks better from the air, not the
Well,
ground.
when you're down there in it, you can't really get the full perspective of what the whole thing looks like.
Yeah.
So seeing it at this level really is, it really tells a bigger story.
You want to coin a phrase like forest for the trees or something.
I'll let you take credit for that one.
I don't want it.
Okay, looks like I can advance now. That's great. So just to touch briefly on what we're all pretty familiar with, this is the approved master plan. This shows the the proposed RV park is number 11, and so this orients north is to the left. So that the proposed RV is shown here enlarged. We're providing 19 spaces, so it's a little bit more generous space than in the existing location, space for more landscaping and picnic tables. Part of the reason there are less is because we've given a landscape buffer and overflow parking on the top side of the lot across the street here. And this, just to refresh, these spaces here do provide full electrical and sewer hookups. We're no longer in that 6-month, 1-year floodplain, so we'll have the ability to provide the sewer and electrical here. Moving across the street, across the highway, there's a series of photos here that show that 4.5-acre parcel on the Cove. The upper left shows the highway embankment to the far left in that image. This is the access road that would ultimately lead under the bridge that goes over the Clackamas River there. And the main parcel being to the right of that image. And a whole series of photos just showing the center of that lot itself. Essentially, the center is cleared out of vegetation for the most part, and it is surrounded on the top of the bank and then at the edge of Main Street with mostly all cottonwood trees, pretty good sized cottonwood trees. And then just for context, in the bottom right, you'll see a view from the edge of that parcel looking out over Clackamette Cove. Topography-wise, there's not really any direct access in terms of pedestrian access down to the Cove itself. It's more of a visual interaction with the water. So this is the schematic plan that we drew up for that parcel. The parcel itself is about twice as big as the lots that are adjacent to McDonald's, and with that, we're able to fit almost twice as many spaces into this. There's 33 RV spaces, and we in order to compare apples to apples, we kept the same size for each of the RV spaces and the same distance between them, and the same width for the drive aisles, and a similar one-way circulation patterns throughout the park. There's a little bit of open space that is left over it's not really developable, but at the point there, the site itself is fairly flat and then slopes right down into the water itself, showing 10 overflow car spaces right off of Main Street, incorporated into the circulation pattern of the park itself. I have a matrix on the next slide that gives an overview. It compares But before I moved on to that, I just wondered if there are any questions about this layout.
Where it says top of slope 30 feet, what's 30 feet? 30 feet there? What?
30 feet elevation, so 30 feet above sea level.
Oh, okay, okay.
And I should mention to that point, the main part of this park is right around 34 feet of elevation, so where the RV spaces are at. And for reference, the RV across the street in the master plan it goes from 32 on the low end where it enters off of Clackamette Drive up to closer to 38 feet. So they're similar in elevation to each other, both significantly higher than the low 20s of the current RV park.
I think one of the, just for a little background, whenever we were looking at the Cove master plan, where we had the apartments or condos located on the one side, but this always tended to be the last piece of those phases. So why the elevation is important is, essentially you have to get habitable space 1 foot above the 96 flood, and that was 50, I think it's 51, 52 foot. So let's say you're at 32, right? You'd have to have a platform of minimum 20 feet before you can build any habitable space. So, it was just one of the difficulties we always ran into on this piece. And then when you have the balance cut and fill component as well, overlaying, right? So it's not like you can just come in and put a bunch of fill, or if you did, you'd have to go cut that equal amount somewhere. So the assumption was this would always be podium. But, like we were talking at Stimson the other night, that's only like a 12 or 13, 14 foot podium, right? Which is kind of typical for a drive aisle to get cars into. Here you're looking at, 20 plus feet before you even get to that 50 foot mark.
Can you go back a slide? That just brought up a question. Or sorry. I think it's the first one you showed, the aerial that the mayor liked. Okay, so for comparison's sake, and you may not have this information, but the other area of the master plan that's shown along there, what's the height there?
So we're on the right side of Clackamette Cove.
Yeah.
So, the theory there was always, I don't remember exactly, it's higher, but the theory there was if you walk along the Cove, it has a very steep drop straight into the water. And so that was going to be rolled back to a 2-to-1 slope. And so all that was just going to kind of roll over for a balance cut and fill.
Okay.
So, they were able to get to that 52 foot by a combination of rolling the dirt, and then, one of the plans was that you would have underground parking for the buildings on top of it, that would then help to meet the balance cut and fill as well as allow for a floodway under the buildings. I'd have to go check. It's not as much as this piece. Like, we didn't have to come up 20 plus feet.
Okay.
I could probably find the
But you had to
elevation.
come up some.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Go ahead, Rocky.
I'm just, so it's 18 spaces planned for the McDonald's parking lot area. It was in 33 for the Cove site. The current site is, how many, remind me?
36.
36, okay.
In terms of context, we didn't get to the level of laying out this layout here. We haven't done any geotechnical work to understand better the makeup of the soils on that site to see what it would be to even establish these improvements out there.
Yeah. And you can tell by the scale, it looks like at least a 50-yard buffer from McGriff Boulevard to the RV park, including trees and such, which is a plus. I mean, when I compare sites, I compare that to, I noticed we omitted the McDonald's building as part of the visuals, but it bumps pretty much up against the other site.
Yeah, you're right, this site is set back from the highway more than across the street.
The one thing I didn't see in this is, what's the land use analysis? Obviously, you did put in here about the natural resources overlay, but, obviously, this is not part of the park, as was indicated in the staff report, and, the zoning that we have for the site, would that allow for this to occur there?
No, it's mixed use downtown
That's
district.
what I was also wondering, so.
I think it's important, the city manager's comments, I remember all these negotiations back when we were talking about developing, this was the least
Desirable.
piece of land in the whole thing.
Commissioner Mitchell, the top of the bank on that side is roughly 40 to 43.
Okay, so 10 feet higher than this.
Correct, and then it was 10 foot of fill roughly
Okay.
to get
So-
to the 52.
So 10 feet of fill over there and.
Versus 20.
20 feet.
Or 22-ish, right? Depending on where it's at.
This area in the plans that came forth before, this was mitigation space, wasn't it?
No, well, so when we did the Cove master plan through land use, and we identified kind of thresholds and buildings, one of the first things we had to do was the natural resource overlay district. So essentially, we identified what the buffer and mitigation would be around the urban renewal properties. So if I'm recalling correctly, the condition of approval called for a 50-foot buffer from ordinary high water mark in, which is right out of the municipal code. Now, when you say mitigation, I guess, I think there's been a lot of ideas, right?
Yeah.
Building, parking, make it a demonstration wetland. So the one I know was approved through land use was essentially a phase 8 would be a podium building here of office or restaurant. Okay. I know that there were more ideas, this thing's been kicked around for at least 15 years, right? So I know that there were other ideas brought forward, but I don't know that we ever really, included them in a land use approval. I think there was just ideas of what could be there,
Okay.
as I recall. That's kind of what I recall.
Any idea what the height difference is between the site and McLaughlin Boulevard?
You can,
I'm thinking about what would 20 feet look like
About that.
of
20,
podium.
30,
Yeah, that's
I
what I'm
think.
thinking, is you'd about get up to that height.
So,
With fill?
Or,
Are you saying the 20 feet is fill?
Yeah.
well, it would be podium, it would be like 2 levels of
But
parking
what
or
was the
something.
96 foot? Because that reached almost the bridge. I mean, it reached part of the bridge. So
yeah, I mean,
going
on
at least to that level.
our topo, I'm showing
The McCullough Bridge?
52 to 54.
Between Oregon City and Gladstone?
Of the highway
But
bridge over Main Street.
It's
I mean,
comes
the-
quickly,
Yeah,
right?
sure,
Yeah.
okay, thank you. So
Yeah, that's the
so that,
McCullough.
so if you went 20 feet with podium, say,
You'd be
be at the height of McLaughlin Boulevard, and then your building would be up.
right.
Okay.
Right, roughly.
Okay, thank you.
But as Tony said, 20 feet is atypical. I mean, 12 is under parking. And when you get into column theory and engineering, the longer and leaner it gets, it becomes a noodle. And it's a whole bunch more difficult to make it strong. There's a whole theory on Euler's column theory. You don't want to do it. You don't have to.
So I apologize for the size of the text on this. We just wanted to do a thorough analysis of the pros and cons for each of these two sites, and then kind of the process of what it would take to develop them as it stands today. And I can just read through. I think a number of these we've already really touched on. With the location in the master plan, it really is tied into the amenities. It's a part of the Clackamette Park master plan. It's tied into the amenities of Clackamette Park itself, whether it's the shelters over there, the boat ramp itself, and the walking paths. There's a pretty direct connection. It's important to note that parcel where the master plan shows the RV park is property that's owned by the city right now. I think the next one stands for both that both sites are at a higher elevation that are largely outside of that floodplain, and they both allow for full hookups, water, sewer, electrical. We touched on the zoning. This one partially came up. The site in the master plan is located entirely outside the NROD boundary, whereas the site that we've studied, that we've been discussing tonight, is almost entirely inside the NROD boundary, so that comes with the full set of mitigation requirements, planting that would be associated with anything that gets developed inside the NROD area. And then just the last pro we have listed there is just real strong support demonstrated through our the public process for the original master plan. Moving over to the study site, it definitely has a visual connection with the Cove, and as we saw in some of the photographs, it's visually appealing, it's good. It definitely provides more RV spaces. It's a larger parcel, so it can be further developed. The other ones we've touched on, and as we discussed, it's more removed from the highway, and there's an existing vegetation buffer, so that's definitely a plus that sets it off. And then the cons for the master plan location, as we touched on, are the proximity to the highway and the proximity to McDonald's, and the fewer number of spaces that are provided there.
Yeah, you know, that could be a positive if people in the RVs don't want to cook breakfast. They just saunter over to McDonald's and get a big breakfast,
I had no intention of discriminating.
I know.
I appreciate
I'm not
the
saying,
comments.
I'm just saying that may not be a detraction.
I might be there too, depending on how hungry I am.
Yep.
So the property that we studied and we're looking at tonight, that is currently owned by Urban Renewal, and that would come with that the whole process of acquiring that property and getting an agreement for that. We walked the site a few times, and it's I think this whole group walked it, and it's important to note the separation between Clackamette Park itself. Not only is it not in the master plan, but just physically getting between the two sites, accessing below the highway. It's not the most enjoyable experience to go between those two spaces. The zoning, as that mixed use downtown, there is the visual access to the water, but there is no direct physical access to get from that study site down to Clackamette Cove or the river itself without walking back to Clackamette Park. We, to date, have no public process to speak to the value or that determines this alternate location. And overall, just a higher development cost. It's a bigger project. There's more infrastructure to develop it, but then also the land acquisition is a really big ticket item to consider.
Let's understand something. The Urban Renewal owns that piece of property, right?
Yes.
Correct.
What's the process? Does it have to be sold to the Parks Department, or is it transferred, or what? So
You can do whatever
we talk about
whatever Urban Renewal
selling
wants.
it is not an accurate
No,
portrayal.
that's not.
Would be willing to sell the property to the Parks Department. That's not an accurate portrayal, is
No,
it? It
that's
could be
not.
accomplished without sale.
It could be, that's one scenario. Wants to do.
Right.
Right. They
Sale
could sell
could
it.
mean,
accomplished without
sale could
sale.
mean several things.
It could transfer, it could sell for $1, it could be whatever.
And access to the Cove frontage, I mean, that's not insurmountable. I mean, we walked that, you were there, we walked that property, all of us. And we know it's been skived by earth-moving equipment in the past, and we know there's berms there, and they'd have to be moved. They were not natural formations. I mean, a pathway down to that, I don't think it's insurmountable. And then you talk about the use of a cove as a water access, hopefully because we're at the same time trying to pursue improving the water quality. Got to think in terms of the totality of what we're trying to accomplish. So that's it.
No, go ahead.
I want to wait till your presentation, and I didn't want to throw that off. I'll wait till.
That was
Getting
essentially it.
Okay.
And I don't think that we were necessarily trying to be too specific about the dollar value, just regardless of ownership, that speaking to the value of the
Value of the
different
piece of property,
parcels.
yes.
Sure. That's not, I mean, that's the value in terms of,
Yeah, that's why I was looking at this is not correct.
current value. I mean, is what we're talking. We're not talking what we
There would have to be, there would have to be an appraisal.
Yeah,
done.
right, just the county
Yeah,
assessment.
that's market value.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
But in that sense, those numbers are drawn from the same source, so in that sense, it's at least apples to apples.
okay. I'm gonna be careful with this as best I can, but I want to address one of the public comment letters and go through some of those things. But I also, I think, and this kind of goes, I think, along the lines with what Commissioner O'Donnell was just saying. Every time we get these pro and cons lists, and the mayor even kind of jokingly talked about, well, this could be a pro or this could be a con. All these could be pros or cons. Who's delivering it can dictate the weight of this impression on the public by putting certain pros and cons there, whether it's from staff or whether it's from our consultant. And you gotta be very careful doing that. Because when you read into this, not sure I wanna say bias, but it is skewed a direction. For example, the McDonald's, I could, yes, it could be a pro, some of our minds it's a con. For me, it's a huge con, having that, the future RV park in that space. So any of these we could flip the other way. Ones that I think we really need to be careful about when this is viewed to the public is how we're, specifying pros and cons based on the ownership. The city owns all of it, okay? We can say urban renewal, or we can say not urban renewal or city, but we know, and especially in my time here, we've switched those properties interchangeably. If I ask the city manager which properties were owned by who, we don't know on any given day.
Yeah, we do.
I mean, I asked the city manager tonight about the RV park, and he's like, I'll have to check. I think the city, the parking lot by McDonald's is city property, but I also know we've put a for sale sign for urban renewal on it at the same time. So to imply, and I get, because I like it clean too, because remember, there were certain properties that we as a commission in the past said, this doesn't make sense to be under urban renewal or vice versa, and we changed them. But that line has been very fuzzy in the many years. So to now say, well, it's this and this, and we have to sell it to each other. I mean, come on, we know that's not true. So writing that kind of implies stuff, saying things like this, and I'm not denying there was strong support for the McDonald's concept, but that's the only one we gave people, right? You can't then say it's a con that we didn't, well, you have to compare two likenesses, right? So if you say that the pro for the McDonald's parking lot, which I know, it's not McDonald's, I'm not implying that, strong support demonstrated through public outreach. Absolutely there was, because that's the only option we gave them. I don't know, and I can't tell you myself if we went through and actually at that time when we went through the public process said, hey, do you know we could also put the RV park where the boat landing is and the fishing parking is? That didn't go through the public process. The public process was not also this other possible site, okay? Now, so I'm just saying we have to be careful with the pros and cons because they work both ways. And if staff is putting input into this and other people are putting into this, we have to be careful of which way it's kind of stacking the deck. All right, the next thing I want to do, I want to go through some questions. I want to clear some things up because we take public comment very seriously. I do. I try to read everything that we get. We don't always get to that, as we know, because we get things sometimes the day of the meeting. So bear with me, because
Hours before the meeting.
Hours. So I really want to be sincere in responding to a letter, but even take more time, I think, responding to this specific letter, because I feel like, I don't feel like it. I know this particular letter from Tim West called out two of us, so I feel the need to respond to it, but also to respond to so many of the issues in this letter and to communicate an understanding that clearly is not there from from Tim himself. So I want to go through that as someone that's been through this process for the last 15 years, and answer some of these questions. You want to get attention, you start off in the first sentence with the word farce. I could talk about some of the other farces throughout this city, but I want to call out some of these things. I'll go through it line by line.
I hope this is going to be constructive. It is.
Well,
I mean, your tone is good.
Well,
Yes,
I'm
good.
going to answer directly these questions. If you think it's not
No, you go
productive,
right ahead.
then
Go right
you can
ahead.
stop me, but I would advise you try not to stop me.
I'm not suggesting
Because I do
that.
want to get through, because I'm legitimately going
I wanna
to
keep
try
this
to
positive.
answer these questions in a way which, by the way, I've been through this process and have an understanding of the Cove development and some of these other things that are brought up in this letter that I think no one on this commission knows.
You'd be surprised.
Well, you weren't in all of the meetings behind the scenes, so I'm just going to go
Not
through some
behind the
things.
scenes, but I was
You're
involved in
delaying it even more.
Yeah, let's go. We have.
All right. So I really want to be, sincere in this. So I'm not trying to create an argument. So the first piece here, where it says the master plan, it talks about reviewed Parks and Recreation and almost approved by the commission. It was approved. It was approved. It was approved by the commission. It was approved by a commission of 3. Okay, and I'm not saying that doesn't warrant an approval. It was approved. I'm not, so it did get approved. Last month, it says 2 Oregon City Commissioners decided on their own. Decided? I haven't made a decision. This commission hasn't made a decision. I'm also going to make the assumption that this is directed at me and Commissioner O'Donnell, who I also assume has not made a decision. I can't tell you right now if I think the extra site that we're talking about is a good decision. That's why we're here. That's why we asked to look at it. That's why I asked the numbers. But I also can't tell you as a city commissioner that the current site in the master plan is the best either. That's why we're asking it. That's why we've been asking it. And to imply that somehow that was changed, we changed our mind last month, I was asking that same question when I was the one of 3 on the commission when this master plan was approved. I asked these questions about, well, I don't think this is the right site. Why, so I've always questioned whether or not the master plan site was the correct RV park, and even at the vote, I was almost ready to vote and support it because I had felt the importance of that process, but also knowing that the public process did get to analyze some of these other options. That's why we got here. Now, I still don't, and we also know that 2 city commissioners can't make any decision. In fact, if 2 city commissioners even thought that this was an option, we wouldn't be at this meeting tonight. The last meeting, the entire commission said we wanted to bring this back. And by the way, that was a shock to me because for months, me and Commissioner O'Donnell had been saying concerns about these sites, and the rest of the commission was saying, we don't see the need for that. And then all of a sudden, the whole commission wanted to look at this site. So that's reality. That's what happened. Okay. And we also know we can't make any decisions on a work session. We're here to look at the information to see, is this a viable location? Okay. I don't know how this implies that we want to donate it. Never said that. Is it a question about whether we pay for it or we don't pay for it if Urban Renewal wants to use that property? We haven't even got into those conversations at all. So to imply somehow we would just hand this property over is not accurate. It says in this letter from Tim West that the site that we're looking at the Cove is not a park site. Either is the site that we're talking about at McDonald's. It's not a park site. So there's that. I mean, to say this isn't a park, well, either is the other side. So it's the same. And then to start talking about development, the McDonald's site is not a park site and could be just as well developed as the site on the Cove. In fact, we put a for sale sign hoping a hotel would be built there. If you haven't followed any urban renewal planning in the last 15 years, you would know that. That is interchangeable, and I'm not saying they're equally interchangeable for development because one size of the property is bigger, but that's what we're here to talk about. Okay? And urban renewal would have to make that decision. This is not a decision that the commission can make. So then we go into one of the things that's mentioned 3 times in this letter. The RV park costs more money than it generates. That's completely not true. It's never been true. Even on the years we had major floods, it was never true. So if that somehow has changed in the recent year or two, I would love to see the paper, because a lot of us have followed that very clearly, and we've had this argument many, many times before. It always has been profitable. Has it made a fortune? No. But we also have not put any money into making it a viable RV park that would attract tourism that would make it successful. And yet it still pencils. Okay, so then we go into restaurants, office space. All of us sit on the Urban Renewal Commission. We had an amazing conversation at our Urban Renewal Commission last meeting. I would watch it. Talking about, and I'm throwing the Cove, I know that the Cove is part of urban renewal, and that whole area, mainly the last topic of urban renewal was focused more on the site near the Stimson property. But in general, what came out of the urban renewal conversation is a big picture vision of what uses we, as an entire urban renewal commission, separate from this commission, vision. And guess what? Offices and homes and dwellings were not at the top of the list for the entire Urban Renewal Commission. It wasn't to say that we didn't think office or homes or housing could be a part of it, but the focus this current Urban Renewal Commission has on all of that area is, number 1, tourism, okay? Tourism frontage. And now, obviously, we're talking about just the Stimson property, but I'm, saying we have a conversation that we, yes, believe there should be implements of other pieces, okay? But to say that somehow by using this one piece as a different use, we don't have a big picture understanding of that whole area. We do. I do. I probably, in fact, I was asked by the Urban Renewal College the other night, is this what you really think this area should be? Yes. That doesn't get into little details. I'm just saying, those 2 pieces of property, either one could be used as development or not. Okay? I really don't understand. I would love to see the penciled out what the $8.5 million is that it's saying to build the site. And I'm still referring to the letter, not necessarily the paperwork we have from the city report, but this letter says $8.5 million it would cost at the Cove without park amenities. I don't know what that means. If I could see that penciled and breaking down, I would love to know that. Is the Cove high potential development site? Sure. But so is the land right next to McDonald's right on 9090. I don't know if that's a better site or not. I'm not making that decision. That's what we're here to talk about. Yes, we've paid for this study, and I appreciate it. Then it goes on to say that Oregon City should not be in the RV business at all. Well, if we really want to go back to this point about the citizen process, if that was true, citizen process would have said take it out. They didn't say take it out. They said we want to move it. And they said they want to move it to the only place we gave them the option. If we would have said here's multiple choices, maybe that would have been different. That's all we're saying. Again, it goes on to the value or the profit and all of that. We don't believe that that's true. The last thing I'll end with is this. It ends with this idea that the Cove was going to be developed with hundreds and hundreds of condos. Anyone that was on the commission knows at that time, that's what we were told. That's never what was going to happen. Now, we know that the developers said, and to the whole community, that we were gonna build condos on that site. Never on the site we're talking about, by the way. That, as we've heard tonight, was never considered for any kind of housing because of the uninterest in that property of developers, but also the need to raise the level of that, so I won't even get into that. But even if we talk about the main Cove site that we were told was gonna be condos, by the time we got to actually the development, they said, we're building apartments. They're never gonna be condos. Maybe we'll turn them into condos, but we knew what that meant. So to imply this stuff constantly without knowing the details of it is really misleading. And like I said, we can develop the other lot just as well as we can develop, maybe even, but anyway, that's enough of that. I don't know if there's any line here that, is really that accurate. And but I wanted to call some of those things out because I still don't know what is the better option. I really don't. All I know is I don't think that site near McDonald's is the best site. And I also don't think that the public got to say that. It doesn't also account for transient room tax. It doesn't account for the fact that we could have any plan on the Cove that would encompass a hotel or would encompass an RV park, all of which contributes to the tourism infrastructure that we as an urban renewal district said is number one, okay? Separate from the city commission. So, I'm still up for a debate on whether what site is the best, because I still don't know. I just wanted to look at the possibilities. And the fact that the rest of the entire commission said after months and months of us asking that question that, yeah, we do too also want to look at it, I guess only they can answer for why we're sitting here. Because I thought it was dead months ago.
Well, I will tell you why I agreed to it as a courtesy. I still don't think that's the proper location for it. I did it as a courtesy and out of respect to the two of you.
And I have no problem with people disagreeing on different locations. That's what it's all about, is having that discussion. We may not agree on it, but we should at least be dealing with the facts.
Do you have anything you want to add, Mr. Mitchell?
Oh, I have a lot. I don't know, have we heard the end of the presentation though?
I think we went through the process.
Pretty much,
that was the last slide.
Yeah, that was the last slide, and I know we have a couple of folks, although they didn't fill out the slips, but I think that because we have a very light agenda, if they would like to say something, unless you have something you want to say.
I do.
You want to say before I ask them to come?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Because I want to be fair to them.
Okay.
And I want them to understand our position too,
Well, yeah.
my position.
And I will say, I'm one that don't do it.
I'm just smiling at
I
you.
just want to,
I'm not saying anything.
Denise, I love you, but
I do
here's
too.
the thing. I'm one of these people that I don't mind hearing public comment at work sessions, but I will tell you, most of the time you deny it.
Yep.
So it's very interesting when you make a choice to accept comments and when you don't.
And that's why I brought it up also. I don't like a situation where sometimes we allow it and sometimes we don't.
Yeah.
It's at
And
our,
I think we should always allow it.
it's at our discretion.
I think we should always
Well,
allow it too.
let's just put that aside for a different conversation.
Okay.
Well, I know, but
it is at our
You need to
discretion.
be careful about when you no, it's been your discretion.
I've asked the commission every time. Sometimes we have a lot of stuff on our agenda and we like to keep it
I know,
short.
but there's times where you very clearly don't let people speak during work sessions.
It depends. That is my legal answer.
It shouldn't depend.
Well, sometimes it does depend. Not every situation is the same.
If you have a policy in place,
Well, we
every
can,
situation is the same.
we
You have a
can-
policy that you allow public comment
We can-
at a work session, or you have a policy that you don't. It's pretty clear, and it's the only way to be fair, because otherwise you have people sitting in the audience. It's happening tonight. It happened with the tourism plan, and they don't have any idea if they're going to get to speak or not.
And
And
they
that's
did.
highly discourteous
And they did.
to our citizens.
and they did.
But they didn't know that,
They did
which
because,
might have kept some people from coming.
no, they
This
contacted.
is I think this is a conversation.
I agree. That's why I said this is a conversation for another time.
Yeah.
So if you do not want to hear people speak this evening, we do not have to do that.
I always want to.
Okay.
My point is your inconsistency.
Agreed.
And the reason you want to take comment tonight is because you know it leans to the side that you're leaning to. That's
That
my
has-
point.
that has-
I think we should take public comment
That has
all the
nothing
time if
to
there's
do
public
with
that
it.
want to speak.
It has nothing to do with it.
Well, you might believe that, but that's visually the way it looks.
So, in the commission's rules of procedures for work sessions, and I know we've gone back and forth on
Yes, we
this
have.
with how, depending on what the commission is. Work sessions are typically held at 6 on Tuesdays, blah, blah, blah. No formal votes to be taken, we all know that. The commission may allow comments from the public at work sessions which will provide additional factual information, expertise, or professional opinion that will inform and educate the commission about the work session topic. So that's kind of the guidance that we have.
And that's how I feel about it. If it's factual, if it's testimony or they feel it's testimony, that's not the place for it. Testimony, the place for testimony is when we meet in regular session. People have information that is factual, which this is the thing I'm following. That's great. But if they want to come in and tell us how to do something one way or the other, and they're not presenting the facts, then no, it's not appropriate. Because again, we're not making a decision. We're here to get information so that we can make a decision at a later date. And getting the most information I can possibly get is important to me. Somebody coming up here and haranguing us about something that we are going to do or may do is not helpful to me. So I know we're in agreement with the fact that it's factual. So I have asked people, do you have some facts or information that you want to explain to us, to tell us about what it is we're talking about? So when I was reading the letters, I saw that Mr. Herman had some factual information that we may not have been aware of, although we've heard some of that story many times. That was information that will help me make a decision down the line. Even though when I started out looking at this site, I was not really thrilled about it, but I thought, let's find out. What is it that I don't know about it? And everything that you asked for has been brought out, and I appreciate that, because now I have facts and information to make a decision at a later meeting. That's where I'm coming from. So if people in the audience have facts and information that we need to use to make a decision, I am all happy to do it. All the time.
That's a decision we can do. We can have that conversation elsewhere. But I want to say this. Anybody gets up here and tries to represent information as factual, better be prepared to show what the source of those facts are. Because there are things that are stated in this letter that are stated as factual that I know they're incorrect. Now, I'll start off on a more neutral place. I like to hear from the public, and I'm respectful of the public input, and I don't disavow the public input. But I also know this, and it's as simple examples I can make, and don't pick on me for my choices of food choices. If you were going to a dining function, and you thought your only choices were steaks or burgers or hot dogs, and you got there and a guy next to you is eating a steak, and you go, nobody told me about that. You should be aware of all potential choices. I used to work with a guy that said, if you go to a steakhouse and know you could have gotten mushrooms at no extra charge, wouldn't you want to know that? So, in simplest terms, I think the decision was made on the basis of the information provided, and I understand that. What I do want to say is, I do take issue with even the choice of words when you say that a piece of property is largely outside the 10-year floodplain. Well, what does that mean? I mean, if the entrance to one of these RV parks is in flooded, the RV park is not usable. So large, it either is usable during a flood thing or it is not. It doesn't matter if 10 feet of it or the first 10 feet or the last. If it's usable, it's unimpacted. If it's not usable, it's impacted. So I don't care for words like largely outside the 10-year floodplain. The thing that Commissioner Smith referred to, I had asked about a long time ago, and is the RV park a revenue positive or negative? And I had asked in 2022, and for some reason I still have this letter, I was able to find it. And it's from Mr. Parno, who was serving at that time. And his answer about my inquiry about profitability was this: the Clackamette RV park brings in about $130,000 in revenue annually, $110,000 in camping fees, and that was under the old fee schedule. It also brings in $13,000 in dump station drop box donations. And when you talk about it as a component of our larger tourism thing, it contributes $7,000 in transient lodging. So when we talk about facts, that's a fact. That came from our accountant.
Our finance director,
He's a finance director. He's also an accountant, our previous.
CPA.
Those are the kind of things that if you're going to get up here, anybody, me, anybody here, any of our participants, come prepared to support that which you represent as facts. I see the RV park as a big part of tourism. I've always felt, and I've said it many times, there's a very different experience in waterfront or water access parking versus parking next to a McDonald's. If you want that type of thing, I've said it, go park in a Walmart, it's free. So I'm trying to give a quality camping experience. You can make the argument we should not be in that business, but financially, it says we can. In terms of life experience, it says we should be. In terms of part of tourism and revenue generation, it says we should be. So those are my thoughts as neutral as I can present them.
Mr. Mitchell.
I'm still in the dark about the finances because I doubt that we fully burdened that property with all the expenses that go along. And I don't, maybe Mr. Reed can address this, but we've got annual expenses 1, 2, 3 times a year to shut it down, to reopen it. Are we tracking the hours that our Parks and Recreation guys spend maintaining the RV park separately from what they spend in the rest of Clackamette Park? So I'm just not sure. Granted, top line is $100,000 a year, but are we getting anything to the bottom line because of those expenses that we're not fully burdening the park with? And that's an issue. That to me is not the biggest issue, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that one.
If I may interject, that's a fair question. Because do we allocate expenses, associated expenses, with every individual facility? Do we allocate them to the end of the Oregon Trail? Do we allocate them here? I don't know.
I don't either.
But what
and the only reason I brought it up was I'm not sure it's any more a solid fact to say that the RV park makes money than to say it doesn't make money.
Well, I
don't know.
Right.
But I don't think that's the reason to make the decision.
Right.
We are.
Okay. I got a million thoughts on this thing. I did want to hear more about the site, and that's what. But I also said, and still believe, that it was going to be a heavy lift for me to ignore that public process, and it's also heavy a lift for me to ignore the fact that our Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee at their last meeting, and I watched every minute of the meeting, was presented with these two options, voted 6-1 to leave it where it's recommended in the master plan. And I believe, I hate to put words in people's mouths, but I believe that one vote was not a vote in favor of the new location, because that gentleman earlier in the meeting asked, would it be possible to make a recommendation of no RV park? So I think he voted, I don't want to put words in somebody's mouth, but I don't believe that he was voting for the new spot when he had asked previously, do we have to recommend one at all? So it was either 6-1 or 7-0 from our Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission, and they were presented with both.
Were they? But,
They heard this exact presentation.
I haven't seen the meeting, but if that was the citizen's letter from, as part of that, because if we're basing, so they're basing on a facts, that's what I'm saying, a letter like that and the pros and cons list can weigh a decision vote like that, when the truth is those aren't facts.
Well,
so that's all I'm saying.
I understand. I think you can make that argument about any letter.
But also in terms of the finances for the RV park, I know that when we, under our finance director, our last finance director and our last park director, that not everything for the RV park was broken out of it, about every, thing, every little detail in terms of staff time. But I know the cost of the flooding and replacing the park and all that was part of that. Because we've been through this conversation many times about whether the RV park penciled and whether or not even changing it in and out, electricity, everything every year was still profitable. And it was. I agree that we should actually track them, because I've been one of the people that said we should be tracking staff time and thing in every single building, because then I could tell you which buildings we're reluctantly not engaging with and ones that we're letting their sit rot, right? So when we talk about maintenance facilities, or when we talk about maintaining our facilities, that's why I want to actually see that department-wide, each property and each park and each thing. And I know that's a huge ask, but that's the only way we can tell whether or not certain things are intentionally being neglected, like the Buena Vista house. But also right now, the reason I'm saying this is because if you talk to anyone at the end of the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center about why that building is like that, because we don't do anything at that building. Now, I'm exaggerating, but we do basic surfaces there. So what I'm saying is, right now, when we say things like, oh, the swimming pool, or the Buena Vista house, or the end of the Oregon Trail, those are buildings that we are choosing to put on the back burner so that we can say, hey, the building needs to be torn down. Because once it's torn down, we get to save a bunch of money. We don't have to do it. I don't like that. I don't like that in a public service way, because we are then making decisions about it's demolition by neglect. I mean, we're choosing to neglect places so that we can say, hey, it's not feasible. And we've done that with the RV park for years. We've had a master plan to redo it. We were going to put a lot of money into that, the current RV park, which I'm glad we didn't, because we're now moving it. But if we ever intended it to be successful, it would. And it would pay for itself. But we've intentionally neglected it so that we can downsize it, move it, take it away, just like we've done to other facilities in this town. I've seen it year after year, and I really think we need to fix that problem. And if that means separating everything out so we can actually track the spending on each property and each park, then we would know.
Okay. So with this information on the new one, we don't know about what geotech issues might be there. We know it would be more expensive to develop. It would generate more income because it's got more spots. It isn't perfect. I think it's the fact that it's under that underpass is not good. It really is separated from the rest of the park. Particularly, I'm thinking, we don't own a trailer at the moment, but we did for years and never had a self-contained trailer. So in the middle of the night, I'm going to have to go under the underpass over to use the restroom in Clackamette Park. It's not.
These will have sewer hookup.
You wouldn't do. Yeah, if I got a self-contained.
Your RV.
Taking the RV, not him personally going to use the restroom.
I can't hook up.
Gotcha.
So I got to go over there.
Yeah.
So it's not perfect.
As if we couldn't build a restroom over there.
We could.
He wasn't right.
Another $1 million.
Okay, let him finish. Let him finish.
For another $1 million. But it's coming down to me to two things. First is that public process. And I understand all your concerns. But it went through it. And I don't want to second guess every single public process that comes along. That kind of defeats the purpose. The other thing, we've spent a lot of time on urban renewal, talking about the Stimson property. And the Urban Renewal Agency, before I got on it, a lot of what is in that urban renewal plan is because we don't want to accept what a developer brings to us. We want to guide what goes on urban renewal property. I'm asking myself, if a private developer came in and said, I want to buy that piece of property from you, or I want you to give me that piece of property, and I'm going to put an RV park on it, would the Urban Renewal Commission do that? I don't think so. That's not my vision of the best use of that property. So that's a stopper to me, that we're kind of walking away from the idea that we want to control urban renewal property to get it back on the tax rolls.
Yeah.
And
now
we're not going to do that with this property, and we're going to put right at the front door to our city on a piece of property that could, and you could make the same argument about the property next to McDonald's.
That's exactly
true.
right. That property also
You
is
could,
the same thing.
but that property is part of the park.
No, it's not.
The entrance is going to be redesigned.
That's not park
The
property.
entrance is going to be redesigned to make it much more pedestrian friendly to go back and forth. If it's done right, I think it's going to end up feeling like it's a part of the park, and you're never going to make that across the street
But
feel
we're
like it's
still
part of the
then
park.
replacing a part of the park and denying any development on that site, and the public didn't know that, right? I mean, so we're having this argument about, oh, if the public, I think most of the public, because of letters like this saying, well, this site's not part of the park, implies that a lot of people think that that parking lot across the street from the park is part of the park. They don't know that that was a developable piece of property that we had a hotel plan for and we put for sale signs on. So I'm just saying, you can't use one argument on one side and then it doesn't make sense. You guys gotta be very careful
Well,
with
it does
that.
make sense because there's a highway right through the middle of it. That creates a physical separation that doesn't
Highway right
exist
through
with
the
that
middle
other.
of it?
Through the, if you're trying to include property on that side of McLaughlin as part of the park, then you've got McLaughlin Boulevard going right through the middle of your park.
Let's
You're
go back
never
to
going
that.
to.
Okay, wait. Please
You're never going to
let him finish. Let him finish.
You're never going to unify that as a park, and maybe that isn't a big deal. Maybe it should be a freestanding RV park. I don't know. I don't think it's the best use for that property. I hate to see us do that now and ultimately have it be short-sighted when it could someday be a part of what we all want to have at the Cove, and instead we have carved it off for this other use. But the biggest thing for me still is the public process. This survived a lengthy public process. It was presented to our Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee and it unanimously or 6-1, whichever it is. I can't go against that.
Okay, and I completely understand that.
Rocky,
but-
excuse me, hang on just a second. So, you've had a lengthy time to chat, and Tim, do you have anything factual that you can give us that you want to say to us about the meeting of the PRAC, since you're still on PRAC, right? So, if there's something that you can add to the discussion, I only watched part of the meeting. I only watched the little, sort of the end. I didn't do the whole discussion. That would be helpful if you want to do that, but I don't want you to go into your letter, but if you have something to say that would be helpful about where PRAC was coming from, in your opinion.
He has to come up here.
So, you can either sit between them or sit next to Kendall.
I'll sit right in this cozy chair. All right. I want to say thanks for at least being open to listening to people. I know that the City Council prides itself on communication with the public, and it's a two-way thing, and I think that's great.
Thank you.
The public process is something that was out there for
Oh, don't
3
forget, don't say your name for the record, just so we get that done.
Oh, I'm Tim West. I live in Oregon City.
And you're a member of the...
I'm a member of PRAC.
You're not representing them, but you're a member.
Yes.
Yes.
So we had 3 years to go ahead and look at things, including the new proposed site, because everything was on the table right there. And it's something that if it, at the time that it wasn't presented to the public, then should it even be considered? Because we had such a long time to look at everything. Where did we get the numbers? We got it from the consultant that you're paying big money to go ahead and get things done. It's something that there would require a lot more planning to make things happen. I think that the biggest thing that I'm upset about is the fact that there wasn't a big communication with the general public about the new proposed site versus the McDonald's site. I think that everybody, the general public, needs to know about this. They also really need to know about the urban renewal property right there. And I appreciate the fact that, Mike, you said that, gosh, what if the commission doesn't like what a proposed development's going to be? But if there's a developer that says, here, I'm going to buy this and I'm going to go ahead and build big properties, an apartment, maybe you don't like it, but Oregon City needs thousands thousands of apartments just to catch up with housing. And if
Okay, so you're
garages
getting into
underneath.
bordering into testimony,
Okay,
so facts about crack.
That's one of the biggest things, because this urban renewal property could be money-making for the city. City needs money very badly, and I think that by putting it into a RV park that's not going to make money, it might make a little bit of money, but boy, if you could make hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes alone and have residents move in there and promote growth in that area, I think that's exactly what Oregon City needs. So I think that
Was that part of
on
the
RV
discussion
park-
with Prac?
Pardon?
Was this part of the discussion with Prac?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah,
So,
perfect.
making it something that the city essentially loses money on because of a lack of tax base, and to take it out of tax base, I think that really hurts the city long term. So I urge a no vote on it, on the new proposed site, and putting it into the McDonald's areas.
So again, that's lobbying, we're not voting
we
tonight.
don't
vote.
Yeah, we're not voting
Our
tonight.
session was, we don't vote at work
Yeah,
session.
we're gonna have a consensus of some sort and move this back to the commission.
Yeah.
And when Mr. Marl will be here at that, so anything else?
That'd be it.
I want to ask Mr. West a question.
do too.
At your meeting, do you think everyone was under the impression that you would have to, the alternate site would have to be purchased?
Yes.
Yes, because that's what the
not
thing
true.
says.
Proposed that, but the thing is
Would that not have been a consideration?
no, not at all. Just because
don't know
this
that.
is a part of urban renewal. Urban renewal is an opportunity for the city to make tax money. And to go ahead and walk away from that opportunity is something that is...
Perceived opportunity.
It is a development. In fact, the city's own urban renewal site lists that property as a property of high developmental...
Someone could go on there tonight and switch that wording instantly.
It is.
It's whatever we say it is.
Okay,
That's right.
But it's
guys,
not, it's not.
guys.
So we need to share with
Please,
folks.
yeah.
Yeah, we have to be honest,
When we
and
were
that's
doing-
And that's
not
public
factual.
perception. It's public
It is
perception.
public perception.
When we were doing the Cove, that piece of property, nobody wanted it.
Nobody.
Huh?
No builder wanted it. If they wanted us to give it to them to
Yeah.
do whatever they wanted with who knows what. But nobody was interested in making that part of the development. So, I mean, there's an answer to this. Put both pieces of property up for sale. Put up the one across, the alternate plan,
which
put up
one
the
goes
one next to
first, the other one becomes the RV
McDonald's. See
park.
what their value is, see what the market attraction is, and see what, but I can tell you, putting 20-foot stilts under a building is not an attractive starting point for anyone.
Okay, well, I'm gonna move this conversation along, so did anybody else that's sitting there want
Thank you.
to
I appreciate
present
that.
anything factual to the commission? Come on, William. Thank you. Thank you, William.
Thank you. My name is William Gifford. I live in Oregon City. And first of all, I want to thank this commission for, first of all, a very well-reasoned response to that letter. But also for the,
Factual, please.
what's that?
Keep it to what we said, factual information, please.
I can start with a thank you.
Yes, thank you's great.
To be looking at other options. The fact that we should always be having an open mind and looking at different things that we could be doing. I listen a lot to the public. A lot of people call me and talk to me about things, as you as well. But I haven't heard anyone outside this commission suggest that moving the RV park across McLaughlin Boulevard is a good idea. Not one voice have I heard saying, yes, it's well. I've heard people say, yeah, it's good that we thought about it.
Oh, so people did know about it.
Oh, yeah.
People are aware.
This is live. No,
So people know about it, this conversation. It's part of the public process. This meeting
That's
itself is
correct.
part of the public process.
That's correct.
Yes.
That's correct. But I didn't hear any support for the idea And the comment about the fact that when the public process was going on, looking at possible alternatives to where that RV site could be, there were two pieces that were missing to me. One was, I didn't hear a really serious discussion as to whether or not we really need an RV park. Does it really contribute to tourism? Is it really a positive aspect to citizens of Oregon City?
Right.
My suspicion is this is just a lot of transient people that are looking for a cheap place to stay, and that's not a definition of tourism. So I would question that aspect of it. The second aspect of it is, if we're going to take a look at alternatives, I would suggest looking around other places in Oregon City. There's other pieces of property in Oregon City that are not next to the river, but if all it's doing is providing cheap overnight stays for people, sure, put it someplace else. But whether or not it's a moneymaker, that's going to be another issue that I think needs to be, because if it's generating 100 and whatever thousand a year, if it's still doing that, what I didn't see is that's net gross. I mean, that's gross. I don't know what, after you take the maintenance out, both of all the physical aspects of it, is it really making money? And if it is making money, is it really worth it? I mean, yeah, if you're just making a little bit of money, yeah, those are my comments and
Thank you.
And the facts are that I appreciate the opportunity of looking at options.
We appreciate it. Okay, gentlemen, you have all had ample and maybe need more time to talk, so I would just like to take a moment I've gone around the table and listened to all of you and anything, Joyce? No? Because I'd like to wrap this up and get on to the rest of the agenda, so.
Which is nothing, really.
It's okay, it's something. It is something.
Joyce Gifford, PRAC member. Okay, and Rocky, you are correct that PRAC voted on the information we were given that night.
Yeah.
Okay, and PRAC was told the RV parks never made money. Okay?
Right, you can
because
only make
when you
decisions with
count the expenses and everything else too. So that was one piece of information we had. The other was, that the estimated cost for purchasing the property, the estimated cost for developing the property, and when PRAC, compared the numbers and said, where is the ROI? When would we ever break even? Even on the smaller one, it would be years. But on the Cove, it'll be long past our lifetime. If, when you think about the amount of money you can bring in at, $50 a night for however many sites there are, and the expense of keeping it up. So PRAC voted on the information that we were given that night, and the consultant had to give us those numbers that I'm not sure where they got them, but obviously they asked around and looked at some things to see what those prices could be. But you're also right that the property is owned by the Urban Renewal Commission, and the Urban Renewal Commission can decide what they want to do with that. Okay, so and Rocky, that I have worked really hard on tourism in this city, and it breaks my heart to see how little it feels like the city government has been, except for giving us money to make a float and a parade, how little that how that's come about, and I don't see that RV park really being a tourist draw. I mean, we haven't been advertising it as a tourist draw. I have family members that stay there. My brother brings his trailer so he can come and visit me. But you just kind of wonder, if an RV park is a good idea, why didn't a private developer already put one in somewhere? Because it's not going to make money. They haven't been able to pencil it out, and we're doing it because when the consultant asked for the master park plan, do we want to continue to have the RV park? Everybody goes, well, yeah, I mean, because we always had one,
Right.
right? So why would we want to get rid of it?
Right.
Because it's kind of a nice idea. It wasn't You can skew statistics how you want to ask the questions. And you know that, we work in education field, and how you ask the question, you can lead the response.
Yeah.
And so the response is, yes, we want an RV park. Well, if we can't have it where it currently is, because it floods all the time, and we're going to be putting in a boat ramp over here, so we need more park space, and it connects over to John Storm Park. Makes sense to make that a park, so let's put the RV park across the street.
So what you're implying is that you think the process was completely flawed? I mean,
No,
what I'm getting from you is that...
Well, part of it was when Rocky said, months ago, he was asking, can we put it someplace other than that property behind McDonald's? My question would be did you direct the consultant, your park manager and the consultant, to look at other places? That wasn't part of the questionnaire I saw.
It was discussed, and the commission voted, as Rocky has explained several times, that we were accepting the master plan as was presented. So,
It was only in our last meeting that the majority and the whole commission changed their mind. It was shocking.
so anyway, can you wrap it up? Can you wrap it up, please?
Yeah, well, okay, but when Rocky says that the RV park has been paying its own way, and then I hear from another corner that it's not, and so, show me the money. And what's coming in, what's going out, and I'd be happy if the RV park just broke even. But aren't we also paying for 2 park hosts that stay there?
They're volunteers.
They're volunteers.
They're volunteers, we provide them a space to park,
Okay,
and their utilities.
Let's wrap it up, please.
So,
I'm not using the timer.
okay.
Thank you.
Well, I agree with much of what you said. If the inputs to a process are incomplete or flawed, the output is going to be incomplete or flawed. And that's what we heard.
I don't believe that.
You don't.
I'm going to take one more breath, because Brian is the only cookie left standing. Do you want to say anything, Brian?
I spoke,
Don't talk from the audience, please.
No, you can't.
Do you want to come and say something? Come up and say something. Don't talk from the audience.
Public can't.
I already had a discussion with another citizen about yelling from the back of the room. You're not yelling, but they were. Thank you,
I
Brian.
spoke at the
Brian
Parks.
Shaw, your name?
Brian Shaw, Oregon City.
Thank you.
I spoke at Parks and Rec last week, I think it was, and gave my opinion at that time. So.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, now may I please have the floor?
I have a couple
I
questions.
appreciate it. So, I participated in all of the open houses and the questionnaire and everything that was done for the process. I believe that the process was fair. There was several people at several of the open houses that I attended that put in a statement that said they didn't think we should have an RV park. That was considered. The majority of people that responded said that yes, we should have an RV park. So to say that only people go down there to have cheap rent, I have several friends who are kayakers who come 2 or 3 times a year. And not just one couple, but several couples. They bring their vehicle down there. They kayak the park. They go to our restaurants. They do what. So they're there. They are not residents here. They are tourists. So I know for a fact that other people are doing the same thing. Maybe there's 1 or 2 people. I don't know. I've not done a survey of who's just going down there because it's, your brother-in-law, you said, goes down there. To me, that's a tourist. They're paying tourist transient tax. So I think that we did a good job in getting out all of the information that we could possibly get, and people had options, and those options were like put in a funnel. They were honed down and honed down and honed down and honed down based on people's comments. So I don't have a problem with the process. It was determined that we wanted to have an RV park. I've had the same question asked me, why do we run a cemetery? I've given them all the history on it. We operate a cemetery. That is one of our municipal functions. If you don't like it, then you can move to some other town. I don't know. So I'm not debating whether we should have an RV park or not have an RV park. We've determined that part of the master plan that we will have one. We want to upgrade it. As a student of political science, yes, we did a lot of statistics and a lot of studies, and yes, you can do lots of things. But I think that we listened to the community. The PRAC was on the ground floor of this process. They saw a lot of stuff before we saw it in some cases. And so I don't agree with everything that they were discussing, but that wasn't my role to agree or disagree. They made a decision. They sent a recommendation up to us. We voted on it. I don't care if it was 5 people or 3 people. We voted to support the recommendation of the PRAC. I respect that they went through this. I appreciate the fact that we looked at the other option and said, is this right or is this wrong? We have information. I'm not looking at it as somebody skewing the results. What I look at is that we had a discussion at PRAC. They recommended to us, if you want to say it was 6-0, the option for the person who voted, who didn't want the RV park. That happened, that ship has sailed. If he wanted to have that discussion happened. We're not going back and revisiting, oh, we should not have an RV park. So I agree with the process. I support what you said, Michael, about the fact that we have a process. It went through a public process. There were things that were looked at. Several people at the very beginning suggested the RV park be in a different place. It didn't get all the way down through the filter. And I was talking to one of the citizens and I said, well, that's a good idea. Let's take a look at that. Let's see how it rolls out in the process. So here we are, in my opinion, at the 11th hour, which is okay. Looking at this, we're going to make a decision at the commission. I want to respect the process. I want to respect what our citizens have said to us because we've asked them to make these recommendations to us. And so I take the recommendation of the PRAC seriously. It doesn't matter whether I agree with it. They went through this. I want to respect their time and energy of going through it. And if I'd had more time, I would have watched the entire meeting, but I fast forwarded through it. So that is where I stand at this point in time. I appreciate the additional information, Mr. Reed, that you gathered. I already knew some of the information just because, you know, the planning part of my hat gets put on. And I said, well, I know that's in this thing and I know it's in that thing. Again, Urban Renewal hasn't discussed it. I think that I'm not sure that an RV park is the best use. I don't want to use highest and best use because I hate that terminology. I don't think that's accurate. I think that a different use would be more appropriate in that location at the Cove. And I know that was one of the parcels that was not looked at originally, but I think it has potential. I still had in my head that I wanted to see that park and amphitheater happen. And I thought that was going to happen. Well, I know. I was at one of the commission meetings as a citizen when the commission voted to allow the developer to escape clause that part of the process because he had to do X. I didn't agree with it, but that was the decision the commission made, and that was the end of it. Now, of course, the chickens have come home to roost, and we've got all sorts of water under the bridge and whatever saying you want to say. We have the opportunity as a commission and as an urban renewal commission to do a do-over. And if there's one thing that I wanted to do while I was on this commission was to get our butt in gear with the urban renewal plan. And so when I was chair, we moved it forward with the help of Mr. O'Donnell, who was agreeing with me. We pushed it to the point to where we are today. Now we've got the mantle to you to get us to the finish line, to get one of these darn properties developed. And I'm going to do everything I can in my power and knowledge to make that happen, because I think we have something to show to the community. We can do this. So let's take this back to the commission at a regular session when Commissioner Marl is here, because I'm sure he's going to be watching it, and let's make a decision about where we want to support the RV park, whether it's this place or within the master plan. And I think I would just like to sum that up and say, let's make a consensus that we move this back to the commission. I think we've talked this thing as much as we can talk about it. We've got information. We all know what, kind of how we're thinking about it. But I think a discussion at a commission level, when we can make a decision, will be valuable. And I'm hoping we can move us to that point tonight by saying, yes, let's direct staff to put this on the agenda when we can get it on there, and let's move this thing forward. I think we've done enough fiddling. So let's make a decision and get moving on this master plan. Because this master plan is within the overall facilities master plan, and I think we need to have this before we can move up that chain of documents and get these facilities moving in the right direction. So I think that's where we are, at least from what I hear, and I'm taking note what everybody said. So do I have a consensus that we can move this forward to the commission for a final decision? Is that yes? Mr. O'Donnell?
I don't think so. I heard more questions than I heard answers tonight. I talked about the relative values of those two properties, best uses for them. Now,
well, but we can discuss that when we can make a decision about it. We're just having a discussion now about facts and information, and it's a work session. So can we move this?
I'll sit it out. You can make a decision without me.
Well, that's not really helpful.
Either is.
We can't make a decision here, as we will all know.
Yeah, you're gonna have to go back and review everything that was presented tonight again. It's gonna be the same long conversation, the same criticisms, the same supports, and in the end, some number of commissioners are gonna vote to do one thing or the other. So, I think we're in this endless loop.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to suggest we get out of the loop.
Well,
I don't think we have to go over everything again.
Ask your others if they're willing to support it.
Please.
I want to actually be super clear, and this might surprise people, but I also probably don't think that new proposed site is the best site. That's what tonight was about, to find that out. I do, though, think that I can't make that decision with real answers. A ballpark estimate of 0.5 million with no breakdown. I actually did a little bit of research before the meeting tonight to say, well, and granted, this is, Google searches and whatever, about approximate costs of RV parks and whatever. If I had any close estimate, we can throw out 8.5 million and say that's what it costs without having any documentation to say, well, what does it cost per site? What is it? We don't know that. That's what we need to make those kind of decisions and to weigh the urban renewal question, okay? I actually still think the best location for the RV park is where the parking is in Clackamette Park currently. I think that's always been the better location.
Where? Sorry?
I think it's the park that you referred to as a possible location where the boat ramp is.
Oh, the parking for the boat ramp.
Closer in the park.
Yeah.
I still think that's a better location. I don't know if that's the right location, but I know that in my perception, the location that we have in the master plan is not ideal for a lot of many reasons, and you can go back and we can disagree on locations. That's not really my concern. Because the truth is I believed that the commission had already settled it and that the majority of the commission here sitting tonight wasn't going to take it to this meeting. So that's why we're here. I thought it was over 2 months ago when we were saying, hey, we're bringing this meeting. Me and Frank were shocked. How did that happen? I can live with what I think is a poor decision by putting the RV park near McDonald's. What I can't live with is staff, and I'm not sure that this happened, or the consultants putting together a pro and con chart that leans one direction. And if I wanted to, and I'm not saying our staff did this, and I'm not saying the consultants did this, but if I wanted to make sure that this project moved forward, here's what I would do. I would put it on the Parks and Rec Advisory meeting, the meeting right before the work session, and feed all of this information in public letters and whatever that aren't factual, based on my response to a certain letter, based on numbers, based on facts that were shaky. And I would have the Parks Commission vote on that, which would be successful. And then I would come to the work session and say that. And use that as leverage to move forward, and to use that as leverage for the mayor to cut the conversation short and move it forward. That's what I would do, and that's the way this city works. I can't live with that. I don't like that. It's not the way you do it. It's the way we have done it in this town,
Because I've seen it. I mean, if I really truly believed that it wasn't the case, then I would live with the decision that I don't agree with. Because we can all live with decisions we don't agree with sometimes. It's part of living in this world. But if I think it's skewed on purpose, or if I think we're neglecting facilities, which I know we are, and if I know that we are making sure that the RV park is not successful from it when it was 2 years ago, for a staff that has constantly wanted to move it out of the park, for a staff that has constantly never wanted to deal with it, of course we're not going to make it successful. We're not going to advertise it. We're not going to create it a tourism destination because we don't want to deal with it. We want to cut it in half. We want to ship it across the street and cause its downfall, which is part of the conversation. I don't think it's going to be successful if we move it. In fact, I would rather see it closed completely than to move it across to McDonald's. But I just want to question in public this process, anyway, I'll leave it at that, because it's questionable, it's a little shady.
Rocky, I appreciate your comments, but I really think you're being very disrespectful to staff. And number one,
I think you're being really disrespectful.
And you were very disrespectful to me by saying that I was trying to help skew this process.
I didn't say you were. I said if I was doing that and I wanted
Nobody is doing that.
Well, I don't know that.
Anyway,
I don't know that.
I'm going to call for a recess right now. I'm calling for a recess. Turn the tape off. We're calling for a recess right now. Yes.
You cannot end the meeting without.
I didn't end the meeting. I just. Okay, we're back from recess, but we do not have a quorum, so I'm going to, with the permission of Mr. Mitchell, adjourn this meeting.
I agree.
So, meeting is adjourned.